Okay, let's get started. We're 3 minutes into our fundraising power hour, and no need to waste any time. I'm sure you have another webinar to get to after this. That's all we do, right? So I'm Valerie Lord. I'm with Envision Consulting. We are a search and strategy firm that exclusively works with nonprofits and offices in New York and LA. And we started these weekly town halls in an effort to just field the questions that we were getting from our clients, our friends, our former clients. So really these are designed to be open dialogue for all of us who are pivoting and adapting and triaging. So this is really meant to be an interactive conversation, especially since this is a fundraising power hour. We want everyone to walk away with tangible ideas and excitement and question answered for what they're going to be doing next. So, I guess next slide. Yeah. So what we're going to cover is, we chose these focus areas for two reasons. One, we think these are the areas where people are likely getting stuck and having questions of how do I do this during a pandemic? And two, just based on the assumption that we are a month into this and into the stay-at-home order or then some. And so we have the assumption that you have already reached out to your foundation partners and your corporate partners, and you have already sort of, any major donors who have a pledge due this year, you've kind of had those big conversations, and now you're trying to rethink and re-strategize based on individual giving specifically. So how we're going to set this up is I'm going to remind you guys kind of high level best practices, which is not going to be new to any of you, but will certainly feel good to hear it again. And then what do those best practices mean during a pandemic? So I think you'll see there's a trend of the best practices are still true. Now it's just times 100. And then we have some special guests here today who I'm very excited about. Again, to make sure that this is a dialogue and as interactive as possible, we're going to hear from development professionals in the field who are doing things, testing things, having stories and examples, and just sharing their perspective on, how they're feeling right now and what they're doing to navigate all of this. And our guests are, so Dana Bean from Union Station Homeless Services, Niki Richardson from TOARTS, and Katherine DeFoyd from Good for Growth, which is a fundraising and marketing consulting firm. So we'll pause between the different focus areas, and I really encourage you to use that chat box for questions, also stories, anything that you've tried, anything that didn't work. Please just be comfortable to put everything you want in there. When we pause for discussion, I'll field those questions to our guest speakers and we'll see how things go. Great, the next slide. Okay, just in case, the fact that you're here means you already know the answer to this question, but just in case you are still having some hesitation, or more likely your board is having some hesitation, let's address any reasons why you might not be thinking you should fundraise. So maybe you're feeling like your organization is not a health-related organization. You're not on the front lines. You're not finding a cure or a vaccine, or you're not a hospital. Should I be fundraising? Yes. Yes, of course you should be fundraising. Yeah, the answer is going to be yes for all of these. But what we've learned just a couple weeks in is that all nonprofits are essential. They're all essential to someone. So the biggest mistake that you can do right now is not to fundraise, is to either ignore the fact that there's a pandemic and go along with whatever you had scheduled, or to do nothing and not communicate to your donors. Another hesitation some people have is, our programs are on hold. Staff has been laid off. What is the case for support? And that if you're not the same organization doing the same programs that you were a few weeks ago. And our response to that is, your doors are still open. If you are still employed, if you still have a mission, then you still have a case for support. Your organization is evolving in some shape or form, and that needs to be communicated to your most loyal donors. Or maybe you're concerned for your staff. Maybe your staff is feeling overwhelmed and unfocused, so you kind of don't know how to push them to help with fundraising. On the contrary, this is actually an excellent time to engage your non-fundraising staff in fundraising. This is a time when your staff is feeling concerned about their job, they're feeling disconnected. And so it can be twofold. You can boost morale and have team building internal efforts that also translate to fundraising efforts. Having them snap pictures of their face masks or their Zoom call with their team. Any of that sort of pride for their organization, pride for their job can translate into excellent awareness and spokesmanship for the organization. And finally, I think this is probably the biggest reason why a lot of us hesitated to fundraise is your donors are in crisis themselves. How do you ask someone to donate when they themselves could be suffering? And this is true, and certainly something to think about in terms of your tone and how you approach donors. But it's also, if your donors, you have a service that you can give to your donors. If your donors are feeling disconnected from society, you can connect them. If your donors are feeling overwhelmed and powerless, you can give them power by enabling them to have impact, more impact. So really, it's a conversation to have with your donors of checking in with them. This is the time when soft asks and check-in calls are probably going to have the same results as a direct ask. Because if people are able to give, and a lot of people are, then they will. So the answer, should I be fundraising? Yes, you should be fundraising. But you should also be rewriting your fundraising plan. So that's why we are here today to sort of talk about these tactical reasons or tactical ideas, because you should be rethinking your fundraising strategy and looking at your projections for the full year. So next slide. So jumping right into asks and appeals, as I said, just quickly, like we all know best practices. What does that mean for life during a pandemic? So best practices for asks and appeals, and this includes direct mail, digital marketing, and campaigns, all campaigns. So we all know to personalize the ask, to say, Dear Joe, to maybe include the amount that they donated towards the last campaign. We know to segment. We know to send a different letter to your monthly donor than to your major donor. We know to use stories and photos and to coordinate campaigns through multiple channels. So social media, direct mail, and emails all need to kind of coordinate together towards the same goal. And providing multiple calls to action. So not just donate, but share, sign the pledge, donate in kind, tell your coworkers. And then of course the power of thank you, stewardship, that ensures your next gift. So those are the best practices, which is we all know, and perhaps I missed some. Feel free to add it to the chat. But what does this mean during a pandemic? Well, all that is true, just even more. So in terms of what you could be doing for direct mail and direct emails, really personalizing, even if it's one by one. And think about not just including the amount that they gave last time, but maybe the date of their first gift ever. Sending a different letter, try re-segmenting. Try sending it to your loyal donors or to your families. And then of course, tell a COVID-19 related story and have a COVID-19 related ask. You can't ignore what's happening right now. How is your organization evolving? What is happening right now? And that is what people really want to hear. And then with the variety of calls to actions, more important now than ever. And in fact, that is one of the reasons why we invited Dana to speak on behalf of what she's been doing lately, is just having a variety of avenues or campaigns or ways that people can support, especially beyond just making a donation, really engages your donors. And the more you do, the more you are likely, maybe, to reach new donors. So we'll talk more about that as a group. And then, of course, we all know this. Thank you calls, thank you videos. I think getting creative now with thank yous is more important now than ever. Okay, great. So next slide, Dana, we will unmute you. Can you share with us some of the things that you are doing right now, and how things are working out with having different options and appeals and campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have launched a number of campaigns. The first time that we reached out to our donors, there was no direct ask. We wanted to provide an update of everything that had happened. So to your point, sometimes that warm touch point really does open the door in the same way a direct ask can. What we saw through that first update was that people were looking for ways to help, they were eager to help, and they wanted to help amplify our requests so that they could share our story. So pretty quickly we moved from updates to direct requests. I think one of the keys for us has been staying in constant contact with our operations team and our programs team. It's a really dynamic time and things are changing so quickly. We wanted to make sure that those teams knew that we were there to support them. They weren't alone, that the community that supports Union Station wanted to provide everything they could so that we could pivot and do the new work that we were doing. So just for example, we found out in the first couple weeks that a lot of the folks we serve were experiencing food insecurity because they have mobility issues or health issues that were preventing them from leaving their homes. So our food needs went from 2,000 meals a week to almost 7,500 meals a week. So to meet that need, we needed additional food. We needed hygiene kits, supplies. So that was one of our first asks to people, to really help them understand how our meals program had grown and all the different ways that people could help. In addition to informing people about those needs, we asked some of our key partners to amplify the ask. So we reached out to some of our corporate partners, to some of our key congregations that had always been tried and true and helped us, and asked them to repost the information, to share it with their networks. So that really helped us, acquire some new supporters during this time. We tried to make sure that we were communicating those needs, as you said, across multiple channels. So we planned weekly e-blasts and then echoed those that e-blast information across our social channels, and then had some of our staff do personalized touch points to some of our past major donors so that they felt like they were really in the loop and part of the solution that we were providing. And more and more, we've just found that even though people are on, personally experiencing some difficult times, they really are looking for purpose. They're looking for ways to plug in. We thought we'd see some donor fatigue, but we're 5 weeks in and, people are still very encouraged at the opportunities to support. We've offered a number of ways for them to do that. So we're asking for monetary donations. We're asking for in-kind donations. Just in in-kind, we've set up different ways for people to do that so they can shop on our Amazon wish list, or we've put together shopping lists if they do want to go to the market. And then we've also provided them opportunities. Some folks are interested in still volunteering their time, which I find incredibly remarkable. So we do still have people that are coming in and helping us package up all these meals and getting them out to all of our apartments and motels right
Yeah.
now.
And that's one thing that I noticed, when I saw like a social media post about, hygiene kits, when I clicked the link, it took me to your website where it showed all of the varieties of ways that it could support, the hygiene kits, the sack lunches, the Amazon wish list. So it really showed that your organization was being responsive and dynamic, and just, it looked so like busy and, you know, and it was really inspiring.
So
and
busy. Yeah.
really busy.
Yeah, we have been remarkably busy, and I think because we've been so responsive, the county has asked us to take on more. So we're now we've opened 2 motels to help unsheltered people come in off the street. So our work does continue to grow week after week. We are in a unique and unprecedented period where we've committed to doing what's right and we're trying to figure out how to pay for it tomorrow. And so we have transparently communicated that to you know, the folks that are in our community, and a lot of them have stepped up and have been willing to help us do that.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any questions for Dana, or just in general in terms of different appeals, direct mail, digital marketing? And you are, in terms of direct mail, are you moving forward with that? Have you changed your projections?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because for us, we had to pivot so quickly from an agency that really focused on the long-term needs of housing security to an agency that was focusing on emergency response. Things were changing too quickly for us to be able to commit to a printed direct mail. So we evaluated and determined that digital channels were the best option for us. So during the past 5 weeks, we've really focused on e-blast and social media. But now that we, you know, have a pretty good understanding of what our response will be, at least over the next 3 months, we are committing to a direct mailing in the end of May. And so we'll be able to talk about our COVID response, what we've achieved so far, and what we are anticipating for the fiscal year ahead.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Like a kind of comprehensive update. And
Yeah.
so we do have a question. Can you speak on how the Amazon wish list is working compared to having a drop-off option? Is one more popular than the other?
You know, we haven't had one that's more popular than the other. I think we have volunteers have always been the backbone of our meals program. So we have a lot of people that have, you know, served dinner in our kitchen every 3rd Thursday of the month for the last 27 years. They're incredibly committed, but they can't leave their house right now because, you know, they're have health issues, or they may be in a vulnerable group. So those are the folks that really have a preference for the Amazon wish list. But we do have people who, you know, still want to visit our center. They still want to, you know, see the staff that they've worked with, you know, every month for years. And so those folks are continuing to drop off items. We also have a lot of people, this has been unexpected, a lot of people who have fruit trees or vegetable gardens that have been wanting to donate their food. So we've seen a huge uptick in people, you know, wanting to harvest from their garden and drop off items.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Gosh.
Yeah.
We have another question related to special events, and Dana, maybe I'll ask this when we get to the special events. But in general, are you doing anything differently to engage those people who typically attend your special event that I know you put on hold or postponed?
Yeah, so we did have an event that was scheduled for April 7th. It was a food festival on the field of the Rose Bowl. So we did have to postpone that. We right now have put together a collection of all the restaurants that were supposed to be at that event, and we put together a stay-home dining guide so that our supporters can continue to support those restaurants. We want them all to be, you know, healthy businesses when we do get to have a food festival again next year. And we want to show them that we're good partners to them. Some of them have established give back programs to us, you know, and that's been a good partnership of keeping the event top of mind, and also finding ways to, you know, continue to communicate with our ticket holders.
That's nice. You're really like maintaining the brand of your event while it's not happening. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the interest of time, we'll move on to our next topic area, and then we can certainly come back and jump all around. So donor relations, certainly crucial now, as we already discussed, in terms of maintaining relationships with your loyal donors, not just for short-term return, but also for the long run. Maintaining your relevance, and this is a time when building up your community is exceptionally important. So best practices, obviously, respect your donors and their perspective and their reasons for donating, relate to them. Segment and target, which we already know, sort of, again, knowing why somebody supports your organization. Continuously testing messages and evaluating appeals. So we sort of talked about that. It's best practice to know, why did your spring direct mail do better than your fall direct mail, and sort of kind of troubleshoot and make changes on your strategy going forward based on that. Now I think that's even happening faster and quicker in terms of, are people responding more to the story about a staff person or about the person being served? Engaging your board and donor cultivation and stewardship. I'm sure we all have been asking board members to make thank you phone calls throughout the year. So best practices, let's see how it relates to now. And then, of course, thanking people in a really thoughtful and meaningful way. So those are the best practices. What do we think that means for right now during a pandemic? So we already kind of mentioned this, but those no-ask check-in calls to donors and board members to say that, we care about you, how are you? So crucial. That is what's going to be, don't even make an ask. The fundraiser's gut always tells you whether or not to make an ask, but in times like these, you don't have to. I think donors right now, and I hope people have stories like this, will say, what do you need, if they are able to give something. This is a great time for data cleanup and enhanced segmenting. I already mentioned it before, whatever you typically do to personalize and to, format different types of letters or emails, try switching it up. Try reaching out to only the people who clicked on the link. There are different things that you can do and different ways that you can learn from this. So adjusting strategy and messages in real time. So as I said before, when you see people liking a certain message or a certain story, perhaps they want more of those type of stories. And, don't ask unless you really need it now, and find alternate ways to participate. So in-kind donations, volunteering. Volunteering is up 70%. And so finding ways that people can virtually and give at a distance and participate. So let's see. So now Niki, we will unmute you. So Niki Richardson, I think what I'd like, in terms of donor relations and maintaining relationships in the short term and for the long term, can you kind of talk about how you're prioritizing or what you're doing in terms of maintaining donor relations right now?
So it's interesting. So first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. I took a lot of notes, Dana, when you were talking, so thank you. Even though we're in very different areas, I think there's a lot of that I can take away from what you guys are doing at Union Station. So what are we doing? Right now, we're using this as an opportunity, kind of like you said, for data cleanup and, excuse me, what I call long-term business development. And we were already in this, so without going into too much detail about our history, we're a young, old organization. We're the result of a merger of two 20-year arts organizations, but we will be celebrating our 3-year anniversary on May 1st. So we're pretty new, but we have history with our donors and the programs that we presented. And we are in the situation where we can't do any of our 3 core programs. We are a presenter, we support local performing arts groups, and we bring kids to the theater. And we don't foresee the opportunity to do any of those things, probably for the rest of this calendar year. Is conservative, I think, to say, 2021, we could probably start to see, and maybe there'll be a phased in approach to that. That is, then if you add to that the fact that most of our volunteer ushers are 70 and above, then we have that vulnerable population that probably will have to have even a longer phase in So we are in this interesting situation where we can't do anything that we're supposed to do as an organization right now. So keeping the morale of the staff has definitely been an interesting part of it. And we're trying to, use different techniques, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But sorry, to answer your question about what we're doing for donor engagement, we have a development task force that had just started to get launched before, we've had a development committee, but sort of a pretty passive committee. It's been me mainly doing all of the driving force, being the main driving force behind this. And now, having them come together, we just had another meeting yesterday, and we sort of took talking about segmenting, we took our top, I think 75, 80 donors, and just divided up the list. I sent it to them one by one and said, who do you know? Put your initials by the name of the person that you're going to call, and made it very clear that these are going to be phone calls and you can't cop out and make email or text messages, because there's a different emotion that gets conveyed in the spoken voice, which can't be done in an email or text message. And the fact is, we're all home, so everyone's answering their phones right now, and it's that human contact is really important. And they're really excited, and I kind of created a script for them to work with. I even put in fact, they all appreciated this, because I even put in as part of the script, don't forget to pause, like wait for a response, don't keep charging on, so it's just simple. These are what we're calling wellness calls right now. It took us a while to get here, though, I would say. We're sort of about 5 weeks into this right now. And we collectively felt, because ours, to your point that you just made about don't ask if you don't need, and because of our situation where our programs are completely shut down and we are in a relatively healthy financial situation right now. And if this continues for a long term, we'll have to pivot for sure. And we're working on those strategies too. But we all use this opportunity to kind of take a breath, because we have been running so fast, so hard for so long. And I don't think I'm alone as a development director in this area. Like, we run 1 million miles a minute. That's sort of our job description. Other duties as assigned has always been the focal point of any job description, right? So we have been given the space to give ourselves grace. And I took that grace and refused to feel guilty about not producing or performing. And I'm not saying I wasn't doing anything. I mean, I was certainly, putting these processes into place. But, I find that I am most creative and can come up with alternate strategies when I have the space to think. And I think we've been gifted that, whatever we all think about this stay-at-home order, we have been gifted time. And we have an opportunity here to either resent it and want to be running, going back to our life as we know it, or we can look at this as a way to reframe how we do life and how we do our professional life in particular. Because there's a reason why burnout is a big thing in our profession. And there's a reason why development director average lifespan is 18 to 24 months. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to shift that story, and also the stories in our own heads, right? What we tell ourselves about our jobs and what is required of us. I think a lot of times we are hardest, well, all the time, we are hardest on ourselves. And this is an opportunity to just take your foot, if you can. And certainly for people like Dana, you can't take your foot off the brake at this point, right? You're going because you have to serve your people. But if you are in a situation where you can take your foot off the brake and maybe regroup and pivot and sort of design what that pivot looks like more intentionally, then you might have much more stronger results instead of being in that scarcity mode of like, what do we do now? So like I said, so we're making wellness calls. The development task force is excited to do that. The one thing that I did right off the bat, like we closed our doors to, being at work March 13th, I think. And that very next week, I was texting with a lot of my major donors, just checking in. I'm making phone calls as well, just to kind of check in. And it was so early on, people were definitely trying to figure out what their new normal, what their new rhythm was going to look like. So that was another reason where we felt like, okay, we want to check in, but we don't want to be like invasive as they're trying to figure out what their own lives are going to look like during this time. And now I think we've settled into, this is our rhythm for the foreseeable future. While we're told to stay home, this is what it looks like for us. I know what my days are structured like on a pretty regular basis. You know, we've all created that for our own family lives. So now we feel like, okay, now we can deploy our task force and have them, you know, reach out to all these donors with wellness questions, and also giving them content to answer questions about what is TOARTS doing, or how are we doing at this time. And if there is going to be more than that, then we've kind of designed it to be a follow-up conversation. So I've let everyone know, don't get off the phone without letting them know that we'll be checking back with them in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. So keeping that next touch point, available and alive.
Niki, I really appreciate so much of what you just said. And I'm sure everybody else did as well, you know, especially, you know, the pressure on yourselves, but, you know, reminding to breathe. And can I just ask, you know, how was it when you reached out to donors? Were they happy to be called?
Yes, absolutely. They, you know, again, we're all home and sort of craving that human connection. So this was, like I said, early on, and the task force is just kicking off now this next round of calls. Last time was sort of a mix of calls and text messages, and it was mainly me. But now they're going to be hearing from their friends, their peers, versus a staff person. And I think I'm really excited to see what this round is going to look like, because I've told all my task force, and there's 5 of them. So I've told them all that they have to make notes and send me those emails right away so that I can record them in Donor Perfect under each person's record. So we have history as we go forward with this. So we'll keep you posted.
Fantastic. Yeah. Any questions for Niki?
I wanted to add, if I could, really quickly, one of the things that we're doing with this time, actually, because we're a theater and because we can't do any of our programming, we're actually curating a YouTube playlist that we're calling our Pick of the Week. And it's a curation of all of our staff. And so another way that we're, you know, so to Dana's point about using email marketing a little bit more robustly, this is the opportunity. So we started the Pick of the Week, where we put a series of videos of other people's work, you know, whether it's from John Bon Jovi to the Global Citizens concert that just happened, or our local performing arts groups, and sort of curated playlist that we're sending out by email. And the other thing we're doing is we're kind of curating, we're getting staff to answer questions. We kind of created a list of questions that they can answer so that we could have a staff person of the week kind of a thing, so that people can learn about the staff behind the theater operations at this time.
I mean, I think that's so huge right now. I think this is the best time to be talking about how essential staff are to the mission, you know, especially because everyone is thinking about the unemployment rate and looking industry by industry. And the nonprofit sector is a huge employer, and programs can't run without staff. So it's great that you're engaging them as in all aspects of, you know, talking about the organization. And I also think it does something for our entire industry.
Yep. And then the messaging that we're working on for the future appeal, which we know we'll have to work on, is the healing power of the arts, because we know that the arts have the power to heal, and we may not be able to be in the theater live right now, but the theater will be waiting for you when the doors open. So.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving on, our third guest hasn't joined us yet. So, and I'm sure we're all eager to talk about special events. We're going to jump to plugging the Giving Tuesday now, just because it's quick and easy. So I don't know if you all know this. Please jump in if you are surprised and haven't heard anything about this. But the organization that brought us Giving Tuesday is now giving us Giving Tuesday Now, which is scheduled for May 5th. Oh, Katherine has joined us. So Katherine, we're just wrapping up with Giving Tuesday Now. So Giving Tuesday, certainly like best practices, obviously set a goal for how much you want to raise, but also set a goal in terms of outreach and engagement. It's such a crowded day. I know a lot of people kind of have a love-hate, but no matter what, an organization will usually get something. And it's a very powerful movement as a group. So obviously preparing your messages in advance based on past performance, using stories, a match campaign or a challenge grant are obviously very, very effective for one day of fundraising, and really embracing the day as a shared movement and a voice. So in terms of Giving Tuesday during a pandemic, what we can say for, let's see, oh, there we go. What we can say is obviously set a goal related to COVID-19, should be reaching out to your internal networks and engaging people to help with sharing content. So your staff, your board, your volunteers, telling them about this day and how they can support it. Again, we've kind of talked about this, and I think Niki gave us some really great examples of staff being able to really help with fundraising right now, and clients too, whomever your constituents are in terms of who receives services, and share the COVID-19 stories. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back. I should pause for questions. What are people thinking about Giving Tuesday now? Do they have their plans ready to go? How high are expectations about this day? Do we have any questions? We do not. So let's come back to this at the very end and go into special events. So again, just to set things up, best practices for special events. We know that an event is supposed to be part of a year-round engagement. It's not just the end-all be-all about raising money, but there's a lot of cultivation leading up to the event, FaceTime to share your story, and then that follow-up and cultivation after the event is really where you develop the strong relationships. With special events, we're always trying to do that unique experience, provide that exclusive opportunity. Peer-to-peer fundraising is really how you get the most out of your special event. So, that's why you have co-chairs. That's why you have table hosts. So getting individuals, whether it's, a race or a gala, having key individuals inviting other people to that event is obviously what makes it successful. Salon events is certainly something that is top of mind. Salon events, as opposed to those big, huge special events, are an opportunity where you don't just get to share your story, but you also get to hear the donor's reaction. You learn more about your donors at those smaller, more intimate events. So obviously putting that in your repertoire of what events you do. Special events, it's that opportunity to tell your story, and we're always trying to make it fun so that people want to come back again next year. So what does this mean for special events during a pandemic? Well, during a pandemic, yes, you want to make it fun, but most importantly, you're providing information and it needs to be uplifting and to give people hope. The emotions are really high right now, and you can't ignore that. Making things virtual opportunities. Catherine's going to go more into this, so I'm just going to go really quickly. But, in terms of being that unique experience, what does translate to a virtual, to work effectively in terms of a virtual event? So comedy, trivia, maybe a concert. What else can be unique? In terms of auctions, everybody loves that live auction. I think, most of the live auction items that we would put in, like a trip to Tahiti, not really going to happen right now. So really auctions need to be completely rethought into what's relevant now. Registration is an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, if your event is virtual, you're going to have you're not getting as much back tangibly. So that would be a low registration. But also a registration is your donation. So, determining that number should reflect what the donation is going towards. And then how to use that peer-to-peer. So can you have individuals hosting a virtual table? Can you ask board members to do their own happy hour or their own salon event? Can you do an open house with your staff or a town hall with the people you serve? So just some food for thought. And then Katherine, very excited to introduce you. Growth for Good, welcome.
There I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, super. So I'm Katherine DeFoyd, and we have a company called Growth for Good based in New Jersey that we help people all over the US. We write fundraising plans and do strategic planning, and we manage and produce fundraising events. And as you might imagine, in this spring, we've had to do quite a bit of pivoting. So we had 4 galas in the spring. 2 have decided to go virtual, and 2 decided to postpone until next year. So what I'm going to do is take you through the slides, and I'll have to tell you to flip the slides, I think, about what virtual events look like. And I want to say thank you, Valerie. You set it up very nicely, because what we're really focusing on when we run these national webinars, which we're now running on how to do a virtual event, and we're producing our very first one next Tuesday with Fiverr Foundation for Children. And I'm super excited to tell you we are within $10,000 of our goal, our lowered goal, and we're actually within $50,000 of our original goal pre-COVID, which is just amazing to us. We can't believe we're at that point. So next slide, please. The reality about virtual events is that they are a short-term, solution. I hope that real events come back, because I think nothing beats being in the room together and building community. To me, I'm not going to read the slide because you're all going to get this, but to me, the most important thing to remember about a virtual event is what you said before, Valerie. It has to, really depend on supercharging that peer-to-peer outreach, which is of course your event chairs, your honorees, your host committees. And that's exactly what we turned around and did with our 2 clients. We always do that anyway when we're running a regular event, but in this case, we really became the wind beneath their wings. We did tons more outreach. And then on Tuesday, the night of the actual event, we determined that evening the video portion and the live portion needs to be no longer than a TED Talk. So it's only going to be 20 minutes, but on the website, there will be different places where folks can learn about what a great drink recipe is, and hear some testimonials from the kids who've benefited from Fiverr. And so they can kind of play around on the website and see things, but the actual event itself is going to be 20 minutes. And we're really eager and nervous about it because we've never done a virtual gala. This is the first one. We've done millions of other galas. So RealWorks, our other client who's doing their virtual gala in June, it's going to be even tighter because they are a company that teaches teenagers how to make videos and helps them, have an on-ramp into TV and film as a career. And so it's going to be even more fun with them because they're even more sophisticated. And I recently attended the Jazz at Lincoln Center virtual gala, which I'll tell you about a little further on. Next slide, please. Can you do the next slide? Yeah, there we go. So, here are the questions you need to be asking yourself. Do you go virtual or postpone? Does your organization need the money right now before June, which is the end of many fiscal years? If so, you better have that event. Does the event already have a true brand and a following solid base? We feel that that's really important. A couple of groups came to us who had a brand new event they wanted to launch, and we said, we don't think you better try this right now. And then do you have the technological capability to pull it off? I have a lot to say about that in my next slides. Really got to think that through. Technology is key. And then do you have the ability to ramp up outreach? Because outreach and communications are really going to drive success. Next slide. Here are the ones I was just talking about to you. One is All In for Fiverr. That's the event that's happening next Tuesday. By the way, it's free. Any of you are welcome to join in. Just email me at kdefoyd@gmail or at kdefoyd@growthforgood.com, and I'll get you the links. The one that's coming up, the Ungala, we're calling it, is RealWorks. That's one coming up in June. We're using Classy. We've really made the peer-to-peer thing work there. And then I shared another one that I thought was interesting, that was featured in Vogue magazine, which did very well. Next slide. So, the numbers look exactly like a gift chart when you're running a regular event. If you're backing into your goal, you do exactly what you would have. So I just share this to show you how we pivoted with these. This is actually a real goal, a real gift chart. I'm not going to read it off to you, but I wanted to just show you we only made a few adjustments and downwardly projected what we were going to earn. And by the way, we saved a lot of money not having to spend in New York. It's very expensive to have a gala, you know, the $100,000 we would have had for the venue. Next slide. So, you know, just like a regular event, which you covered very well, Valerie, so I won't belabor this, but you really must have a great event chair and a couple of good honorees that are going to help you. And a host committee is essential. And really what we do love about, we don't love Classy because it's very expensive as a platform, but it does enable a great peer-to-peer. It has a great peer-to-peer platform. And so we're finding that's very helpful. But, you know, you don't have to use Classy to make that happen. I think the peer-to-peer thing happens based on, you know, shoe leather. You really got to help the staff and board focus their outreach too. You got to find the technology platform. So the night of, you can just put it up on YouTube, which is what we're going to do with Fiverr. We've discovered a new technology, which we like a lot, called Shindig. It's like Super Zoom. It can have up to 1,000 people. Zoom is nice, but it has the limitation of 200 people. The technology for ticket sales is exactly what you would have used, you know, for your regular event, Classy, Give Lively. We also like One Cause and Charity. And we feel like for the auction items, you know, we're helping our clients move. If you can, if you haven't already paid for a software like One Cause, if you could move it to Charity Buzz or one of those that can help reach greater audience, we think that's a good idea. Completely agree with you, Valerie. You got to rethink what your charity items are. That said, Fiverr always gets a cruise in the South Pacific donated every year. I was like, take that right off. They were like, nope, not taking it off. Guess what? They've already got $7,000 bid on it. I can't believe it. So, you know, you can, I stand corrected. And then, you know, obviously having a strong event brand, I think is more important now than ever. That's one thing Growth for Good helps people with, really. And it's nice if you're building on an event brand you already have, meaning that event itself is a branded, that hopefully lives in the sub-brand of your overall organization. Next slide. Here's a listing of different software packages that we think are useful. And so this is just, I share this with you all. I'm happy to talk about any of these individually offline. I don't want to go through each one. Next slide. You know, we think the night of, the key thing is you've got to have one person who is the organization explainer, you know, on the video. You're going to have an honoree, we're going to have an impact story, you know, or a testimony, just like in a regular event, and we're going to have a place to, you know, push the button to donate. Those are the kind of key elements of a virtual program. And again, as I said, we think they should be about 20 minutes. So what we're going to do for Fiverr is 20 minutes long. Then there'll be places on the website. We're seeing other virtual galas advertised to us at an hour and 20 minutes, 2 hours. And I think, oh my Lord, I would never personally want to do that. You know, cook with us in the kitchen and then come to, I just think that's way too much. Now, I will say that Jazz at Lincoln Center went all over the world and they had jazz musicians playing in their living room, and that was amazing. But, you know, we can't all be Jazz at Lincoln Center. By the way, that virtual gala is available for anyone to look at. They did a lot really well, and I think there was a lot that could be improved. I urge you all to just go onto Jazz at Lincoln Center's website or their YouTube channel and take a peek. Do it while you're folding laundry or making dinner, because it's an hour and a half long and it's not bad to watch all the great performances. Next slide. Here are the online event solutions, as we spoke about before, you know, YouTube, Zoom, Google Hangouts, GoToWebinar, Shindig. You must practice with these and find out how to make it work. I feel like the night of the event, just like the night of a gala, it has to go perfectly and smoothly. We believe there should be one person running the technology, one person speaking, one person reading comments. Like, you've really got to think all that through. You don't want to try it the night, you know, be experimenting the night of. Next slide. That's it. That's my last slide. So I'll stop and take questions.
Yes. So please enter your questions into the chat. I have some questions.
Okay, great.
Pop in.
I hope I have answers.
So for those organizations that postpone their event, say from April to September, but that currently it is still planned to be a physical attendance event, how much time do they need in order to transition it to virtual? Like, how soon do they need to make that decision?
Fabulous question. In both instances, We are on parallel tracks coming up with a plan to pivot to virtual. And one of the organizations already moved their event to the spring of next year. So, but we are parallel track right now. One of them is Hip Hop Public Health. So yes, we are not assuming that we're going to be able to come together again in New York, at least in the fall, sadly.
Do you know how much does it hurt an event's brand to take a year off? What kind of effort has to go in to maintain that over the course of a year?
Oh boy, isn't that a question we're all going to be finding out the answer to? Well, that's why we're saying to pivot to a virtual event, you better plan on supercharging your outreach. It's going to have to be, 5 times as much, maybe 10 times as much. With RealWorks, the development director, and I'm so proud of him, gave himself a goal of 20 calls a day 3 weeks ago. And guess what? They hit their goal. They've hit their goal for their virtual event. They had to cancel their other event. People are still giving in these times. And I just saw a study about that. If anyone wants to email me, I'll share it. I'll share it with everybody on this webinar. But people are still giving if they're employed. And, that's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm. It kind of came through in your financial slides, but there are some benefits to going virtual in terms of expenses. Does staff time go down as well?
No, staff time goes up.
Oh, okay.
As I just said, outreach, which is, translates, staff time goes way up. And by the way, we're spending, I think, $5,000 at Fiverr. Shindig costs some money. We're spending some money on the technology part. Now, some of that money we would have spent to make a video for the event, but we're not spending the money for the dinners. So there are some expenses that are real. And I don't believe in free personally. I think it's worth spending the money and treating your guests right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, last question. I know they're all coming from me. What about for donor cultivation events? How do those work virtually? Can they have the same kind of intimate relationship building? Does it work?
Well, I think just like a regular, friend raiser, maybe even more so, you would want to keep it small. You've got to kind of build in the interactivity. It's tricky. And by the way, it's all a brave new world, isn't it? So I can't honestly tell you I've done a million of them. I've now been on 4 Zoom calls a day. I'm so tired by the end of the day. And I just read that it's actually more exhausting. I'm also an extroverted introvert. So I'm by nature tired after talking to people all day. But I'm finding that, by the end of the day, and I just read a study about it that says that we're much more tired from being on Zooms all day because it's like performing and you're seeing yourself on the camera, which causes, by the way, anxiety. So, I think all of this is going to have to be considered as we consider online virtual cultivations.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, thank you for that. Yeah, that's the truth. We did get a question about fall events, but I think you addressed it. That
Ask it anyway. Who is it? Tell us the name.
It's Katie.
Hi, Katie.
So, thoughts on fall events? We're trying to make the decision whether whether October is a safe date to plan.
What city is Katie from? I think, Katie, you probably should be planning for both at the same time, unfortunately. What city is she in?
She hasn't spoken to that yet.
Oh, Pasadena. Maybe it'll be better in Pasadena. I love Pasadena. Maybe it'll be better in Pasadena. I don't know. Call me up. I'll give you some tips. But I think you better be making a plan for both, sadly. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you should let go of your event. I think one way to build the brand is to keep going. And we're finding, I'm happy to report, and I hope we keep seeing it, that we're going to hit our goals. We worked for them. It didn't come easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's no giving up on events. They're so valuable. And everybody has spent years building up their brands. Yeah. Okay, so going on to the next.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. So we talked about Giving Tuesday, so I think we can move on. Does anyone have any questions overall? We have a couple minutes. So on any of the topics that we covered today, donor relations, special events, appeals and asks, these slides will be sent out to you guys for further thought. And of course, we welcome all feedback and any lingering questions. All right. If for those of you who are interested in our next town hall, it'll be next Thursday, and we're going to be talking about board governance. So look it up. It's going to be a very juicy event. Have a wonderful day, everyone.